Okay, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning. Hey Dave, how are you? Sorry about being late.
I was late too, but you were later.
No, I was feeling cold here. We're at that time of year where some days you can feel really hot, and I was wearing a short sleeve shirt this morning, and I'm feeling cold. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, like
but later on I'll probably be feeling hot.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I don't know you don't know what to wear these days. All
Yeah.
right, it's just the time of year. It's the way it is. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. We're going to be talking about a number of issues, mostly local today.
Yes,
Yeah,
but I would, uh, I don't want to put a downer on everything right away, but the um, the Israelis have entered southern Lebanon and started doing the ground operations in
yeah,
Lebanon, and already they've had 8 soldiers die, which is a lot for the Israeli army,
yeah.
and they're all young men. And
Mm,
I like to point that out. Like we have statistics coming after us. So many children died here in this school. So many women and children died in that school when it was blown up. But they are nameless to us. We can't see their
yeah,
names. We don't
yeah,
know. This was an Israeli soldier that need not have died, and he was a young man. Well, these soldiers, I think the captain was Uster or something, 22 years old. So even though Israel is the aggressors here and the greatest sinners, uh, what they've done in Gaza and all that, I like to just point out that there's young men dying on both sides of this, and
yeah,
there's a young man that didn't have to die. These 8 guys didn't have to die. They're young, yeah, they're in their 20s, and they're
yeah,
dead, and
yeah,
it's needless because that invasion is needless.
yeah. All right. So, as I said, mostly local today. Niagara Falls to encourage casino competition. Um, Basically, Jim Diodati has said for quite some time that they're looking for, or Niagara Falls has been calling for some time to open up the casinos market to competition, and this has finally caught the attention of Queen's Park. Mayor Jim says basically we've been talking about this through multiple governments, multiple ministers. The good news is finally somebody's listening. We've got 10 to 15 studies over 15 years talking about opening up the gaming and making it competitive environment, not a monopoly. And they even sued the OLG. The outcome is that they ended up getting $130 million theatre. But we were upset because monopolies don't serve the public, and the competition will keep all the operators sharp. But
Well,
you see more
Are,
casinos
are they
coming up.
talking about competing to run our casino or competing to
No,
have more casinos?
having more casinos and having having they still have to be run. They still have, any profits, etc. Would there be a co-ownership thing between the OLG and the casino? The casino person who runs the casino. But I think that they're talking about having, I think OLG would still be in control of it, right? In control of
Oh, they have to
the
be. They have
gambling.
to be.
Yeah,
That's the deal.
but
That
it's just there would
the
be
Ontario
different
government takes
operators.
20% off the
Yeah,
top.
yeah, and there will be different operators, and the whole point about having the different operators, and I would say I can see that happening. I can see though that any new can see new casinos that won't be in these great big won't be in these great big buildings that the current OLG casinos are. They might well be smaller, more specialized casinos.
maybe, but I've always I voted against casinos coming to this town,
I know.
and I think that, and although since that time I realized that many of my friends and that have had jobs there, so at least they have work out of it.
Yeah.
The problem is, I mean, I talked to Gary Wilkins the other day, and he's helped retrieve 9 bodies out of the Niagara River, and I bet you some of them were gambleaholics, because for a while there, they were like gamblers were just walking out of the casino and jumping right into the gorge there or into the falls because it's close. These are things we don't hear about because they give the city a bad press. But the gambler casinos make most of their money off of gambleaholics, and I don't care, or problem gamblers.
True, that's true. The people who come back, who come back week after week, month after month.
That's right, and there are various types of problem gamblers, and it depends. It depends on who you read. It goes anywhere from 2% of the population to 5% of the population. And the one fellow I read, he actually did a paper for the OLG, I think it was. He reckons about 4.8% of the population are problem gamblers, and that percentage is divided. Now the bottom percent is super chronic gamblers, the 1 or 2% in there. And then there are others that are kind of problem gamblers that just like smokers who smoke too much, or drinkers that drink too much but still function. And they get 35% of the revenue from this 5% of the people, which, although they have, let's say they have 100 people coming in, 5%, 5 of those people are the ones that are going to make most money on. The casual gambler that goes in there once in a while on a holiday is not the person that brings in the money for them. So there is a kind of immorality to it, I fear, and but it's a vice. It's like selling cocaine. They're going to come, but there are also going to be a lot of jumpers and people jumping in the water.
I know that you've got mixed feelings about it, and you will always have. I share those mixed feelings. It's good that we get money into the city from the casinos, and that would include, basically the new casinos would bring new money as well to the city. But I also, I'm also concerned about the negative aspects for, for those that suffer from gambling. Mind you, it's like gambling, casinos are opening up everywhere. Why shouldn't we operate more here?
Well, the problem is you are going to, and I don't think that a certain amount of the revenue from the casino is supposed to go to treat problem gamblers. And when they touted that fact back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or more, probably, my timing's wrong here, it turned out that they weren't doing that good of a job, and that the problem gamblers kept sneaking in. They're supposed to be face recognized, and some problem gamblers write up a legal document said, if you see me, throw me out. But they can't help themselves, and they sneak in one way or another. And they were getting a lot of bad press, and it's all gone away. You don't read about that much anymore, how problem gamblers are sneaking in.
The other thing about this is Gary fished out 9 bodies out of the river. Remember also that irrespective of why they jump in, there's the press rarely ever reports jumpers.
No, they don't, because there's bad press. And there's another reason too. and it's a more important reason. If you publish, if you have a somebody that jumps, then what you do is you encourage 3 other people to jump. That's what they found out in Toronto, particularly with subways. In that, if a guy jumps in front of the subway, and they put that in the paper, the next day they've got 3 guys that jump in front of the subway. The fact that someone had the courage to do it, so to speak, the others will. Other people will do the same. Mike Cushman says, "Last thing we need is more money in laundering machines." Yes, that's another issue as well. But purely speaking, like, people wanted the casino. I voted against it for the reasons that I thought it was going to affect. At the time they built the casino, they said maybe 1% of the people will be gambleholics or problem gamblers, and we'll be able to filter them out. There's a lot more than that. And as I said before, someone who wrote a paper for the OLG identified 4.8% of the population producing 35% of the revenue of a casino.
Peter Baker points out he'd rather have Niagara gain new industry manufacturing jobs as opposed to being the den of vice and addiction for our city.
Dens of iniquity.
And Mike, of course, agrees with that. That doesn't surprise.
But even for the non-problem gambler, anytime I have friends that come into town, and some of my friends want to go to the casino right away because they don't have a casino where they go and they hang around. Yep. And my one friend won $700 once. You think she's not going to go the next time? She comes.
Yeah, exactly. I get it. We also don't know which side of the river the jumpers are coming from. That's true, Karen. Yeah, some of them come from the US side, that's for sure. But you can probably assume that 50%.
Yes, they have a casino over there.
Yeah, 50% come from either side. And we actually have an article later on about unclaimed deaths in the city as well, and how that's been rising. So there was a jumper at the Table Rock the other day. Yes, there often are. We know that. Yeah. And without even knowing what the cause of why they jump, I think there's an element of what Dave is saying is very correct, that many of them do jump because of their gambling debts. There's, some people make it big here, some people don't.
Well, they might as well build a little roadway from the casino right to a diving board that goes into the Niagara River, because there.
Actually, you could have a slide.
I've talked to people who have worked down there, down by the river, in and around where the Maid and the Mist was, and they witnessed. I think they told me 12 jumpers over the space of time they were working there, over the space of 10 years or something. They witnessed 12 jumpers.
Yeah, but if you put a casino up Lundy's Lane or something, up where somewhere like the Americana is, where that end of Lundy's Lane, you wouldn't necessarily find jumpers who were jumping off the balls.
Yeah. Well, they might jump off of buildings though too. So the problem is, and those are the ones that are the most desperate.
Yeah,
those that jump, and like I said, like Karen pointed out, it's on both sides of the river, in particular because they have a casino over there too.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's just a matter of I don't know. It's very hard to treat a problem gambler. Extremely hard to treat them. They're very much like a drug addict. They and even those ones that chronic gamblers or people who gamble all the time will never tell you about their losses. I knew a guy at work that he he was a foreman. He made a lot of money. He was a general foreman, and he would gamble all the time. He gambled left, right, and center. Gamble on anything. He went down to Vegas. He lost $10,000 all week long, and then won $2,000 on the horse races that were there. And he was all excited. He told everybody about the $2,000 he won on a horse race, but he didn't tell everybody about. Then, if you pushed him a bit, it turns out that he actually lost $8,000 overall, and because he lost $10,000 the rest of the week until the last day when he won $2,000 on a horse race. That's the one thing you remembered, though. That's the one thing he kept bragging about.
But it's what you call a selective memory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm, yes, Peter Biker is absolutely 100% right. I would like to see more industry. I'd like to see, I'd like to see high tech. I'd like to see manufacturing. I'd like to see high paying jobs come back to the city, because sure as heck, the casino is probably not going to have that many high paying jobs.
No.
Other newer casinos are probably going to have, if they're in smaller buildings, etc., they'll probably be more limited in scope and probably only have smaller numbers of jobs anyway.
Yeah, seriously, I don't know. It's I always have trouble with gambling, but you're not going to stop it, I guess. And I guess it's better than illegal gambling, because illegal gambling, the boys from Jersey come and beat you up if you don't pay your bills.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we don't want that. Yeah.
But but if they have to, you don't hear that much about it anymore because they didn't really publish it much in this town. It's bad press. But problem gamblers, how well are they treated? What is the success rate? You never see any of that, even though the casinos put aside a lot of money to treat problem gamblers. But it's kind of like a bar putting aside money to treat alcoholics. Is it going to work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if a bar contributes to Alcoholics Anonymous, is it going to work any more than, I don't know. Anyway, but it is a source of money in the town, and I can't really complain too much because I have friends that make money there.
Yeah.
That work there.
So the cost of homelessness is rising dramatically in Niagara Falls. It's 529,000 in 2023, and they've done some comparative studies, and the cost of homelessness has gone up 15 times over the last. I think it's 15 times. Sorry, the highlights on my thing has gone. All right. Okay. So dealing with homelessness cost Niagara Falls taxpayers $529,000 in 2023. It's already cost $304,000 during the first 6 months of this year. So that's rising. The conservative figures were included in a staff report to the city on Tuesday, and the report said it's difficult to fully assess the cost it requires. The assumptions in evaluating many variables, and the costs keep rising. There's no question, however, that there's a real cost to the issue, and that those costs continue to climb. And I think, though, that is at the nub of something that has been long concerning me. The amount we're spending in dealing with the homeless problem is going up and up and up.
Waste rolls, offscourings. That's what they used to call the white trash, basically. There's a term called white trash, but that term has only been around for a couple hundred years, or maybe a little bit longer. But what happened in the in what was the colonies, and then before they got their independence, Britain used to gather up all of its wastrels, vagabonds, and other people that didn't have a home, were poor. They gather them all up on ships and dump them in their colonies, including the United States. This was the source of the a lot of the Appalachian types, but there were poor people, white poor people everywhere, up and down, sometimes living in mud shacks. It's unbelievable. I got a book called White Trash, and it's a history book about these people and about their legacy in the United States. Well, it had happened in Canada too, but to a much lesser degree. And they called them wastrels. They called them offscourings. Offscourings is have you can look that up. I don't want
That
to.
looks a German. Sounds a German name.
Offscourings is OFF scouring.
Okay.
It refers to well, it's kind of crude, so I won't say it, but
Yeah.
the and wastrels. They even had named wastrels and clay eaters, and they had a bunch of different names for these people, and they were thought to be parasites, useless people, worthless people. In fact, they even called them wastrels, and I'm afraid that we will begin to start to look at these people on the edges of society in the same way, because at the time when people of means looked at these people, they viewed them with more disdain than they did free black people. They had a natural prejudice against free black people, but the white people who were even poorer in a lot of cases than and just wandered around in threadbare clothes were scary to the people of the colonies of that day, and thought to be unchanging and a parasitical group of people on society. And I'm afraid we're going to get that opinion of our homeless today, because it's very, very difficult to counsel them into returning to a normal life. Most people who try and talk to them say, oftentimes I hear them just kind of say they don't want to change. They don't want to change. They don't want to. They like it like that.
Mm.
I'm afraid that once addiction and mental illness and that get into someone's mind, change their character, it's very difficult to bring them back into the fold. And I'm afraid there's going to be a lot of resistance to feeding and clothing them too. If you can get shoes, if you can get a coat, if you can get a tent, if you can get as much food as you want, because there's a food kitchen and Project Share, if you can do that, why go to work in your mind? It's not the way that most of us think, but once you start taking drugs or are mentally ill in the beginning, your thinking changes, and you think, why should it? I like this. Like, I mean, I don't have a nice house and anything, but I've got everything to keep me warm. But
it's estimated that currently there are 338 homeless in Niagara Falls as of June this year, compared to 477 in St. Catharines. So St. Catharines, a larger city, you'd expect there to be, they're basically a third again the size of the city. So yeah, you'd expect their numbers to be larger, but I think that it's uncharacteristically large in Niagara Falls.
The issue manifests itself in diverse ways across municipal operations, necessitating a comprehensive strategies and resource allocations to manage associated costs and maintain public safety. One of the big things I saw here is the city staff are having morale problems because they always have to clean up or deal with homeless people. It's affecting morale. Private businesses have to clean up after them all the time.
Yeah, and that's of course the other thing they said here. More than 70% of Niagara Falls costs are related to the labor of the staff actually going out there and cleaning up after them. All right. It should be noted that in most cases, the city would have paid these labor costs regardless, right? But the municipality did not have to call additional staff. It did not have to call in additional staff or use, use staff overtime. So this is time spent on homelessness that could have been spent on city initiatives. So basically, it's wasted effort by city staff.
So cemetery staff encounter daily tasks of cleaning debris, waste, and needles, including excrement, across multiple sites, along with providing support and security amid increasing encampment activities. So imagine if you're going to visit the gravesite of a loved one, your grandma or grandpa or something, and there's excrement beside it, and there is a tent close by, and maybe somebody comes out and hounds you for a couple of quarters. The historical statue of this we've reported on, the historical statue of General Drummond was stolen and damaged. Well, Drummond Hill Cemetery has experienced extensive damages to gravestones and other. This is the one of the most historic places. It's like that. This is where the Battle of Lundy's Lane happened, and that's hallowed ground for Canadians. That was the largest, most bloodiest battle in the single day in Canadian military history, as far as Canada is concerned. I don't know. These people increase. Firefighters is another thing. Firefighters have responded to 5 calls in fire calls in abandoned buildings, with sometime required demolition.
Yeah.
The likelihood of these fires were caused due to unsheltered individuals having fires in the buildings to keep warm.
Yeah.
Gale Center continues to serve as a hub for homeless people, offering shower facilities Mondays and Thursdays. Staff managed to budget laundry and supplies, but expressed concerns about the sustainability and suitability of these services. So then they hang around the Gale Center, and the Gale Center is where you want your family activities. That's where your daughter and your son go for their hockey practice.
It's now become the point for give me money, right?
That's right. And I've said before how people used to think of white trash or homeless people. Like in that particular case, they were white, but the wastrels, the offscourings, those waste of skin kind of attitudes that will be applied to these people. We're very patient with them now, but I'm hearing more and more of this. Why do we feed them? Why do we give them clothes? If we don't do that, maybe they'll get a job. You see, it's beginning, and I'm afraid that if that population of homeless people grows, I think our attitudes will sour towards them.
That was exactly what my father used to say. Don't fit, give them money, because they sure as heck won't be spending it on food or somewhere to live. They'll be spending it on booze, drugs and things that are harmful to them. So you don't give them money for those reasons. But then the other question is that when back in those days, the numbers of homeless that we saw were a fraction of what they are today. And what they're saying, the impact is municipal work staff perform extensive cleanups of homeless encampments, and the issues has added to the workload of city bylaw staff, which has led to additional staff people being hired in 2023, which is again why the costs are going up.
Yes. I don't know. This is going to be a continuous problem, I fear. And I have mentioned this many times on the show, that I am worried about the attitudes of the public towards the homeless. And I have heard heard and read, and unfortunately I can't remember the source right now, where they're actually talking about incarcerating these people for vagrancy or drug possession. In other words, uh, small amounts of drugs are decriminalized now. They want to criminalize them again so that they can force them into incarcerate them for a while and make them go through a process of detoxification. Like a guy in jail, if somebody we put in a jail, even though there's lots of drugs in jail, has a better chance of becoming a little bit cleaner in jail because there's less, even though there is drugs, but there's less of them in jail. How do you treat them? How do you bring them back to having a normal way of life? And it may come to the point where we have to have some sort of incarceration area where we put people who are homeless and drug addicted and mentally ill, so we can treat them properly.
I was going to say that actually, in some regard, you'd be better off in a prison than you are in a homeless camp.
Yes, that's right. So I don't know. It, like I said before, there is no way of helping this particular group of so-called wastrels, like I put there, unless you do isolate them from their lifestyle as it is now.
Yeah, and Mike,
they have a lifestyle where they do not contribute to society. They don't pay taxes. They don't hold down jobs. They are parasites on society. They take, but they don't give. They don't contribute.
And Mike is basically saying the cost of homelessness seems to match the cost of real estate. And Peter Biker basically says it's hard to describe what happens to someone who has been deselected by their community. Brutal rejection will last a lifetime for most. Redemption is exceedingly rare in our modern era.
Well, good words. But I would remind everybody that when we started getting more and more homeless people, we were open-handed trying to help them out. And we were finding places for them to live in the hotels on Lundy's Lane. I know, because I know people who were lucky to have had that happen to them. And we feed them, and we get the food kit, the soup kitchen, and all these other Project Share. Someone's going to make sure they got boots. Someone's going to make sure they got coats and all that. But when you go down to Project Share and they come in for their box of food and their brand new coat, and they're smoking cigarettes, and they've got a, you know what I mean, they're and kind of spitting on the ground, and they appreciate it in their heart, but what's happened to them? And it, even though we were kindly disposed to them overall, and still are with our soup kitchens, Project Share, and stuff like that, I'm looking down the road a little bit when we get more and more reports like this of how much the homeless people cost. We have 338, and we spent conservatively $520,000. That's $1,500 per homeless person that have cost us. It's also irritated our business. It's irritated our businesses where these people make a mess of and they have to clean up their excrement and that. And the city workers the morale is very, very bad because it's a continuous, never-ending thing that in everyone's mind shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember where it was, but there was one place I was walking down the road, and there was a shopkeeper basically spraying the front of his property because in order to open up, the homeless had just basically left a mess, and it looked like it was an everyday thing. He sprays it down every morning in order to open his store. Right. Okay.
And when they're fed in front of St. Andrews, when somebody comes and feeds them, brings them food, then they throw the wrappers all over the ground. They don't even go over to the to the garbage
and put them away. I know, right? And Randy West basically said, if you don't incarcerate the homeless or poor, you're allowing the lifestyle to grow. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, that and not it's not my idea. It's I heard of it, and I've heard of it recently.
Yeah,
And I think
I
it was
know.
on when they were discussing that they felt there was no other way out by like one of the things was to uh, recriminalize small amounts of dope, of drugs, because if you catch somebody, then you can incarcerate them and put them into a program over the space of a few months. Other people have thought of actually trying to get the whole community into a special place where they can be treated. Because in the heart of hearts of all these people, they would like to have a house. They would like to have a home. Uh, but their minds have been changed by whatever their mental illness. And I talked to a couple of homeless on Bridge Street one day. They were picking through some garbage. And so I just pulled over. I had some empties in my car. And I says, you want these empties? You can cash them in. And they said, I remember what they said. They said, once you're homeless, it's almost impossible to crawl yourself back up. There was kind of like this glimmer of hope that they might be able to find a way back, maybe. But the longer you're homeless, and once you went from home to homeless, there seemed to be no that was a quantum leap to get back into the zone of having a place of your own shelter.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And talk. Okay, got a couple of comments. Vagrancy still exists as a crime, or even on paper, can afford a little of something. Even a pauper can afford a little of something, says Randy. Okay, Karen says, I saw a documentary showing how Helsinki, Finland conquered their homeless using the same report that is in our city on our city staff desk. Yes, housing first. Yeah,
She only likes that because she's a Finlander.
We've seen that, and we've discussed
Suominen.
that one. We've discussed that one before on this show. Okay, and I think this might well be related. The number of unclaimed bodies in the province has risen 15 times. So there are 15 times as many unclaimed bodies in Ontario as there has ever been. And there's a number of reasons for this. But in 2009 and 2008, the number of unclaimed bodies in the province was 130. And according to Ontario's Office of the Chief Coroner, in 2023, that number has risen to 1,183. So it's 15 times as many as before. And a lot of these, they're talking about the reasons. They're people who deceased and prepaid their burial, estranged, can't locate their next of kin, no next of kin identified. The next of kin were located, but no response. They didn't claim the bodies. Next of kin were unable to claim the bodies or were estranged. The numbers, the next of kin was unable to claim the body because of distance, right? Unable to claim the body due to poor health, and unable to claim for financial reasons. In other words, they couldn't get to Ontario to pick that body up, right? The others, about another portion of them is parents not claiming the children after death.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Staggering reasons, but the numbers have been steadily increasing, and obviously some of those are likely to be homeless.
Oh yeah, there'll be a lot of homeless in there. If they knew that a couple of years ago somebody died right there on Queen Street, just overdosed there, and they lied down and died there. And if somebody knew their name, luckily, and somebody may have had some old ID left, but there are people that they don't know who they are. But even others that if they do manage to track them down, the families don't want them. And
Yeah.
they talk about a case here where a man had a pretty normal life. He had a alcoholic, abusive mother and things like this, but he seemed to pull it off. Had a job, got married, worked for 20 years, but alcoholism bit him, changed his life, and he became more and more removed from his family over and over and over again. And his own son hadn't seen him for over 20 years. And then in the end, when they finally did track down the family, they turned down the body because it was somebody that hadn't even been in their life for a long time, but they felt that if they claimed the body, they might be responsible for any debts that he had incurred, which was erroneous, but they thought that. Plus, they couldn't really afford the burial. And so they just turned it back over to the authorities to bury it because they will. Very sad. The guy was an ordinary guy. He hung around with his brother. He got along very well with his sister-in-law, and they tell his story here a little bit. It's a well-written article. It's a very long one, pretty long.
It is pretty long, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure. And when I was opening, I was concentrating on those statistics because, in fact, it surprises me how many we've got, and the increase is certainly matches, if you like, our increase in homelessness. And
it is, but yeah, and I would imagine a lot of homeless people die and are unclaimed, but. For the most part, these people are not those people. They are people that just die and are unclaimed. And that's because we become more and more isolated. There was a case that I know where the guy died and he was over a month in his room before anyone realized. And the only reason why anyone realized is because his decomposing body fluids were leaking through to the apartment underneath.
Yeah.
And that's what tipped them all off. And it takes a whole month for that to happen before the remains liquefy. So no one even had talked to him for a whole month. His car was parked in the same place, and this guy was so isolated.
Yeah, but again, you think about yourself and where you live, right? If your car's the only if you unfortunately died and your car was legally parked, nobody would even think about knocking on your door, right? If your car was parked awkwardly for a couple of days, which meant it was really awkward for the neighboring person, they might come knocking on your door.
Sooner or later, someone's going to notice that you haven't been around.
Yeah.
And in this building, because everybody seems to know everybody. But the main problem here is people in our world today, people are becoming more and more isolated from their families. That just happens to be the trend. And more isolated overall. More and more Eleanor Rigby's out there. There's more and more Rigby's.
Yes. And also the numbers of people, when you look at the statistics, the numbers of people that we have that are living single lives, that basically no longer have relationships. Like yourself, you're living alone. I'm not saying you don't have relationships with other people, but you live single. If you didn't have those relationships, if you weren't involved in the community, you could be one of those, right?
Oh, certainly. And shoot, I hear about this from time to time where the landlord's the one that hasn't got his rent for a couple of months, and so he he enters the unit and finds the remains of that person. And sadly, though, we don't have a potter's field anymore, which I or a pauper's field or a potter's field anymore. But somebody will bury the body, but or cremate them, and that's a minimal cost basically. But what is it telling us about our society when more and more people are just living and dying unclaimed? More and more Eleanor Rigby's out there, you know, who are all the lonely people? Where do they all come from? And that is telling here. There's more and more of them. We live a more and more isolated life. We don't need to interact with people as much because we have our television and our telephone or anything else like that. But what is it doing to society? We are a social creature. We need interaction with others.
Right.
What was that, Karen put up?
Karen said the only coroner's office is in Toronto.
Oh,
that
really?
surprises me, but I've got nothing to dispute it.
I thought it was regional. Okay. No, go ahead.
Peter Biker says, send the bill to the LCBO. They profited from from his painful life.
Yeah, or the neighborhood bar or whatever. But some of these people aren't drinkers, and there's a tendency too. Though I've known two people that I can think of at the moment that did not want actually four that did not want a funeral service, did not want one at all. When they died, put them in the ground, put out a notice a month later or something like that. They didn't want a funeral service. They didn't want a memorial. They didn't want anything like that. That was their wishes.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, that's a sad thing too, because usually those funeral services give closure to those around you. You know, that is what they're designed for. Death is for the living, not the dead, basically, or the funeral services are for the living, basically. It is for them to find some kind of closure.
And if they've already got closure because of a homeless person's left years ago, well, they don't need this reopening. All right, death has a cost, and that cost is not affordable. And low-income families, as they are now, people will not fight to lose people. Will walk away and turn their backs on their dead. Sad but true, Randy. Sad but true.
Yeah, we find that. Actually, we find that. I don't know. That I've had a couple of relatives that have had to have assistance in burying their loved ones, and it's out there. The assistance is out there. However, but I'm telling you, it's a very, very sad thing. It is we are having I think I don't know. I think the best thing for everybody to do is just shut off the TV and stuff and start going out and talking to people, because we are becoming so isolated. We don't want. We seem to be turning our back on the family. We don't want to have kids. You know, all that. We forget that we are a social creature and we need other people, and that's how we aspire. That's how we judge our own selves. That's how we fit in with the world. When you become more and more isolated, you become, I don't know, I don't think you're fulfilling your life as well as you could. But those are the trends. Withdrawal from society. And I don't know. It's when you have a rising population of homeless people who are non-contributors to the society and want to live on the edges of society, and you have people who are withdrawing themselves from society enough that if you can find someone to claim the body, they don't claim them. I don't know. It's pretty sad. Wouldn't want to wish it on anyone.
Yeah, and Gary Wilkins has basically said, "Appreciate you, Dave Wheeler. Enjoyed our talk. I like being alone." Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of a loner myself. Maybe not as much as Gary there, but yeah, I do. Um, I very similar that way.
Okay.
But I think when Gary goes, there will be lots of people at his funeral.
Oh, sure. Okay, Peter.
Be all the politicians. Yahoo, Yahoo.
Yes, I can get another term in. Yes.
Yeah.
Right, Peter Biker. As always, the best conversations could be held here on Talking Niagara. Thank you for all your amazing opinions. You're welcome. Right.
Thank you, Peter.
I do months on end at the Whirlpool, says Mr. Wheel. So Mr. Wilkins.
Yeah, it was amazing. I had a good talk with the Green Bastard, and he was like pretty very very interesting man. Very interesting man. Yeah.
All right. We're going to leave it at that point. You got any further thoughts on the on these deaths, etc.?
These are the tendencies of society right now that don't look good. We have a growing number of people that will be referred to wastrels or parasites going on forward. I think this is a warning. How do we then bring people back into society where they are contribute to society and rather than are parasitical to society? And I think they, in their heart of hearts, they want that too. Is how do we do that? The idea of people's bodies not being claimed by their families when they know it is also an indication about where our society is going. We're becoming too cold. It's too distant. And finally, I will gripe about the wars again. We are on the precipice of a very, very dark chapter in our history, where a democracy has slaughtered 42,000 people, mostly women and children, and are now killing a lot of civilians in Lebanon, and their own soldiers are dying. Like I pointed out before, a young man, 22 years old, and all the other young men, they died. 8 of them died. They need not have died, because going into Lebanon did not have to be an option at all.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to point out one last thing. Randy West basically saying, I think a lot of the problems we face today, such as poor, homelessness, unemployed, responsibilities at death, are the direct result of a lack of administration by government.
I think it's a lack of good ideas. I think the administration is there. How the administration is directed, I would say it's analogous to their economic direction. When Mark Carney went to BC with the Liberals, he told them about their economic, how the government interacts with the economy and industries. It dates back to the 70s. It's really outdated, and I think the same thing when it comes to government and how they interact with the public. This to me is a glaring health problem. We talk about health problems in like COVID or drug addiction or anything, but the idea that people becoming more and more isolated, I think, is a telling psychological disorder that we have to reverse.
Right. And so Gary's basically saying he's given so much to society, and where's the payback? And it's no wonder why most stay alone.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and I know you have, Gary. I know you have, and there's a certain point where you kind of feel stabbed in the back, I guess.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. All right, and I think we'll leave it at that point.
Okay, everyone. Without further ado, I bid you do pray for peace. Pray double hard because I can only see more massacres happening, unfortunately.